This is the iRobot Braava Jet M6, model 6110. The real benefit I have felt is simple. My kitchen and hallway stay genuinely clean, not just surface clean, and I do not have to think about it while I am doing other things. This is a dedicated robot mop, not a vacuum. It is built for hard floors like tile, hardwood, laminate, and vinyl. It works best for people who already keep dust and crumbs under control, either with a separate robot vacuum or a quick pass with a stick vacuum, and want the daily mop taken off their plate. If you have pets that leave little paw prints, kids who track in dirt, or you cook often and get a fine film of grease around the stove, this is the kind of device that quietly keeps those messes from building up. The design matters more than it seems at first glance. The Braava is square with a flat front edge, so it can trace along baseboards and reach into corners better than round robots. There is a precision spray nozzle at the front that wets the floor only before the pad makes contact. That means it loosens sticky spots without flooding the floor. The water tank lifts out easily and fills at the sink without splashing. Pads click on with a strong hold, and I like that I can use either reusable washable pads or disposable ones. The dock is compact and does not demand much space. I tucked it against a wall and the robot lines up with it reliably. The top camera is not there for photos. It is part of the visual simultaneous localization and mapping system that helps it understand where it is. You do not need to fuss with that, but it is the reason it moves in those neat straight lines instead of bouncing around. Setup took me less time than making a cup of coffee. I placed the dock, plugged it in, dropped the robot on the contacts, and opened the iRobot application on my phone. Pairing over wireless fidelity took a minute or two. The application walked me through a first mapping run with a dry pad. That mapping pass is worth doing. After it finished, I named rooms, split a long space into kitchen and dining areas, and drew a few keep-out zones around small rugs. From that point on, the experience felt effortless. I tapped the kitchen, pick wet mopping or dry sweeping, choose standard or extra scrubbing, and hit start. The response is quick. It leaves the dock in a straight line, pivots, sprays, and begins its pattern. There is no aimless wandering. If I pause it, it stops instantly and resumes without confusion. Performance is what sold me. The Precision Jet spray is not a gimmick. On my tile kitchen floor, dried coffee rings and faint sauce spatters softened on the first pass and disappeared by the second. On my sealed hardwood, it leaves a slightly damp trail that dries in a few minutes without streaks, as long as I do not overload the tank with solution. When I used too much cleaning solution the first time, I saw faint haziness on the darker boards. Dialing it back to mostly water with just a small cap of iRobot solution solved that. The pad has enough friction to lift grime, but does not chatter on textured tile. It gets right up to toe kicks under cabinets, and because of the squared front it traces baseboards cleanly. Noise is low enough that I take calls in the next room without thinking about it. It is not silent, but it is more of a soft hum and a quiet spray sound. Navigation is the quiet strength here. The visual simultaneous localization and mapping system builds a smart map and sticks to it. It moves in overlapping rows and does a perimeter pass so edges are not forgotten. When the battery gets low during a long clean, it returns, charges just enough, and then resumes exactly where it left off. I have watched it do 3 rooms, recharge, and pick up the last few rows of the hallway without missing a spot. I rarely see it get stuck, even around chair legs. The one exception is very narrow gaps where the pad barely fits. In those cases, it sometimes tries and then backs out. I made a small no-mop zone under a side table, and that cleaned up the logic. My real-world tests are not glamorous, but they are honest. After spaghetti night, I intentionally left a couple of tiny sauce dots near the trash can. The Braava sprayed ahead, rolled over them once, and they were gone on the next pass. After a rainy walk, my dog left light paw prints through the entryway. I sent a quick clean to that area and watched the prints fade evenly without any swirl marks. Dried coffee near the fridge needed a little more patience. The robot sprayed, wiped, paused, sprayed again on the second pass, and it lifted completely by the end. Grease haze near the stove is a slow burn problem in my house. Running a wet clean there every other day keeps that area looking crisp, and more importantly, the floor does not feel slick. I have a specific routine use case that has stuck. In the morning while I make breakfast, I open the iRobot application and send the Braava to the kitchen and dining room with a wet mopping pass. It works around the island, gets between chair legs, and finishes before I leave for the day. In the evening, if I see crumbs or dust bunnies, I do a quick dry sweep run in the dining room. On weekends, I set a targeted clean right in front of the refrigerator and the stove, since those are my mess zones. This targeted cleaning feature is one of my favorites. I can drop a square on the map and say clean just this spot, and within a minute the robot is on it. There are features that genuinely improve the experience without feeling like fluff. Imprint Link is a great example. I have a Roomba i-Series vacuum, the i7, and the application lets them work together. I schedule the vacuum to do the kitchen and dining room first, and when it finishes, it triggers the Braava to start mopping. I do not have to think about the sequence anymore, and that order matters because mopping after vacuuming gives the best results. Smart charge and resume means larger spaces are not a problem. Keep out zones and no mop zones are precise, so I protect a wool rug and a charging strip under a console table. Voice commands work through Amazon Alexa and Google Assistant, but honestly, I use the application more. I do appreciate that I can say, start mopping the kitchen, and it handles it. It is not perfect. Sticky sugar spills, like a few drops of syrup that dried overnight, can be stubborn. The Braava will soften them, but sometimes I spot spray with a bottle and then send the robot over that area to finish the job. Very dark, glossy floors can show streaks if you use too much solution or if the pad is past its prime. Keeping the pad clean and the solution light fixes that. Lighting matters for mapping. During the first map build, I turned on the lights so the camera could see, and the map looked great after that. Maintenance is simple but not zero. I rinse reusable pads after each run and toss them in the wash at the end of the week. The tank needs a quick rinse now, and then so it does not hold residue. Also, while it will try to avoid rugs, I recommend drawing no mop zones around anything that you truly do not want damp. I like how it handles edges and corners. The square design and the way it overlaps its passes mean that dirt lines along baseboards disappear. Under chairs, it weaves through without getting tangled. I have seen cheaper robots push light chairs around instead of cleaning. This one nudges gently and keeps its path. The dock return is steady. It aligns, corrects a little, and settles in. On rare occasions it misaligns by a few inches and tries again. It always finds home on the second attempt. If you are wondering about speed, it is not racing. It is deliberate. A full kitchen and dining area for me takes around an hour, depending on how thorough I set it. I prefer that steady pace because I care more about even coverage than a fast run. The good news is the floor is lightly damp and dries quickly, so I walk through without leaving footprints. A few small tips from living with it. The iRobot cleaning solution is concentrated. A small cap with water goes a long way. More is not better. Rotate between wet pads and dry pads so you are not trying to use a soaked pad for a second job. If you have a high traffic entryway, try a dry sweep pass first, then a wet pass. That combination keeps the wet pad from acting like a lint roller. And during the first week, spend a little time naming rooms and splitting spaces correctly in the map. The better the map, the less you think about it later. The Braava Jet M6, Model 6110, is for people who want their hard floors to stay clean day to day without babysitting a robot, and who are fine with the idea that this is not a miracle worker for major spills. It is at its best as a maintenance tool that quietly maintains a higher baseline of cleanliness. If you already have a Roomba, the handoff through Imprint Link is excellent. If you have mostly carpets, or you expect it to replace a deep manual scrub after a big mess, you will be frustrated. If you have mixed hard floors and you value clean edges, consistent coverage, and smart room-based control, it is a dependable upgrade that you feel every time you step onto the floor. If you got value from this review, hit subscribe, drop a comment with your questions or your own experience with robot mops, and I will get back to you. Thank you for watching.